like, we know Yondu in the first movie, kind of as this, bully type figure in a way, who, yes, he took Peter, in, but he's kind of told him he was going to eat him and all this kind of stuff.
He's very proud of the fact that both he and his men did not eat him.
Yeah.
They're very proud of that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But you don't really get to know him until the second movie, and then you get to know him a lot more. So we know that he had picked up Peter. He's the one who picked up Peter. It's because he was, tasked to do that for money by this entity, Ego, which is played by Kurt Russell in the second movie. We don't really know anything about why or what that was about. And we also don't know why Yondu didn't deliver him, but we find that out in the second movie.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of seeds that are like planted in the first movie that come back in the second, and one of them is Groot.
Yes.
Quite
That's
literally.
that is such a happy moment.
Yeah.
It is such a happy moment when you see that we have one of the branches of Groot who's deceased is now a baby Groot.
Yes, and they have a lot of fun with baby Groot over the course of these movies, and I'm sure into the next, where he's growing up. So he's a baby, he's in the pot, he's dancing in the pot, and then he's like a young kid Groot in the second movie, and it's hilarious because he doesn't understand things, and they send him to go get this blade that's kind of on Yondu's head that controls the yak arrow or whatever it is that he's uses.
I never knew what that little arrow was called.
Yeah, I think it's called that, but I don't know. Don't quote me on it. I think I read that online.
Okay.
But it's an arrow. He kind of has this arrow. That's Yondu's weapon. Is that he has this arrow that is controlled somehow with a combination of this blade that he has on his head. The one that he has in the second movie looks like a mohawk fin. It looks like a fin that looks like a mohawk, which is pretty cool. In the first movie, it's just kind of a flat mohawk looking thing. But it's a combination of that and whistling. So, like, he's whistling and it guides the arrow. Which is kind of awesome.
Yeah.
And I also, think there's a good conversation to be had at some point, maybe not now, about whether Yondu could have taken out Thanos.
I think that would be a very good discussion.
Yeah.
And anything is possible because we find out Yondu says that the arrow is controlled by his heart. It is not controlled by anything else.
Yeah.
And then Kraglin is wielding the arrow.
Yes.
And I don't believe he has any mechanical apparatus on it.
Yeah, that's possible. But when they're looking to get that fin, I think that's why. It's because he needs... I believe he needs it for the arrow to work. Because then they escape, and Yondu basically decimates the entire crew.
Which is amazing.
With one little arrow.
And I think he could have taken out Thanos to answer your question. I think Yondu could have gone the distance because he is a survivor, and he could have used that arrow to go through Thanos who knows how many times.
Yeah, I think if he could have had the element of surprise, I think he could have done it.
Yeah, no question.
So even just by himself, so that's pretty interesting. And yeah, Yondu becomes kind of this heroic character. It's another example of this anti-hero to hero kind of thing that James Gunn really does so well in all media that he works on. Because I think you have that in Peacemaker as well. But Yondu in the first movie, you kind of look at him as a bit of an antagonist.
Sure.
But over the course of the second movie, you see that he had reasons for doing some of the things he did. And there's actually quite a strong parallel between Yondu and Rocket and the ways that they have behaved being a result of their environment and the way that they were treated when they were, younger. And their struggles to be better parents in a certain way. Like, Yondu isn't really Peter's dad, but he behaved as his dad, and he's a better dad in so many ways than Peter's actual dad.
Yes.
Like, if the first movie is really about the mother, the second movie is, well, and there is a lot of father stuff in the first movie with Thanos being Gamora's quote father as well.
Sure.
Although he's not really her father either. You know, he destroyed her race and kidnapped her when she was a child.
Yep.
So he's raised her and he's treated her as a daughter. And I think Thanos really does love Gamora as a daughter.
I agree with that.
When we see that into Infinity War, that the sacrifice of Gamora by Thanos is only possible because he values her so much. And yeah, I mean, I think that you have to say that he does, but you also, I think, get into the father thing in the second movie so much because of Peter and how Peter didn't know who his dad was.
Mm-hmm.
He says that, you know, he would imagine David Hasselhoff as his dad, which I think is hilarious and wonderful.
Yeah.
And he meets his dad, and it's almost, you know, first he's suspicious, which I think is very real reaction.
Sure.
You know? And then it's also that it's almost like it's too good to be true because his dad is like this superhuman cool being who kind of has his own planet that he's a part of, and he's immortal because he's this being called the Celestial. And, you know, Peter learns that he has secret powers, and he learns how to wield them really easily and quickly once he has access to the source of power on the planet. So it's very exciting that he has this relationship, but then, of course, it turns out to be too good to be true.
Unfortunately. Yeah, because that's what's hard about the second film, is you see Peter begin to let Ego, his father, into his heart. And the more he learns about his father, his true father, the more terrifying it is.
Yeah.
Because you find that he is an egocentric maniac.
Yeah.
Everything is about him. His vanity knows no limits.
Yeah.
And then we find out that Ego gave Peter's mother brain cancer because he did not want to be distracted by her because he cared about her too much.
Yeah, I mean, he's a complete, unbelievable megalomaniac, basically. Yeah. He wants to populate the universe with himself.
Right.
Which is foul.
Yeah.
And he did love Peter's mother, but he loved her so much that she was like distracting him from his ultimate goal, and he had to kill her. You know, these are these kind of people that show up in Marvel who I just don't understand. Like Thanos with the snap.
Right.
Like, his whole thing was, I gotta get these Infinity Stones so that I can get rid of half of the population of the universe.
Right.
So that we don't have a problem with resources. Mm. Well, how about you frickin' make more resources with the stones?
Right, would that make some sense?
I mean, like, hello. Instead of, like, killing off half of everybody, just be like, nope, that is literally the only way we can do this. Like, think outside the box, Thanos. Hello. And yeah, with Ego, it's like, oh gosh, I'm distracted by this person. I guess I'll murder them with brain cancer.
That's a horrific blow. And then we find that there's this cavern with all of these bodies of his other children.
Yeah.
And those children did not have the magic spark that Peter has.
So they were expendable.
Yeah, they couldn't create the planet with him. They couldn't help him on his quest for galactic domination? I mean,
it's not domination necessarily. He just thinks that this is the way it's supposed to be. Like, he's managed to convince himself that this is like the ultimate goal and that this is the right thing.
Yeah.
And he won't be dissuaded. He's completely single-minded in his purpose. And if you're not serving that purpose, you're preventing him from achieving it, so you must go. And that is what he ends up doing with Peter. Because Peter doesn't support him anymore after he finds out, hey, you killed my mother.
Right.
I mean, and Ego's just like, well, why? You know, Ego doesn't think that's a big deal.
No.
He's like, well, of course I had to. Like, it's just like, that's what I have to do. Because, you know, I have my work. And
Right.
my work is the ultimate importance. But yeah, that's what kind of snaps Peter out of it. And he realizes that he cannot support this. And we also find out that this is why Peter was never given over to Ego. Because Yondu found out that Ego was killing the kids who he was delivering.
Yeah, because if they were not able to help with, what do we want to call it, planet building? Or
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, like, it's almost like seeding the universe.
Right. If you
Yeah.
did not have magic powers,
Yeah.
you were discarded because
yeah.
you were worthless.
If you can tap into the source of power on the planet to use that to propagate,
There we go.
then he just got rid of you.
Yeah.
And Yondu wasn't going to let that happen to Peter once he found out, because Yondu is actually a good guy, as it turns out. And as, you know, they team up, the Guardians plus Yondu, to kind of fight Ego, we start to realize that Yondu, and Peter starts to realize that Yondu is the real dad in his life.
Yes.
And that's what Yondu says. He may be your father, but he isn't your daddy.